Morning everyone, good morning. Gary's got a very scared look on his face now. Yes, it's really happening, Gary, it's starting. You're going to be up here very soon. I hope you all had a good night, whether you were with us for the meal and for Lucy last night, which was hilarious, or whatever you ended up doing in Reading, painting the town red. I hope you had a good time. We're going to start really promptly because there is a deadline at 10 o'clock that is not going to wait for us. So we'll start pretty soon, but just a couple of bit of housekeeping. There's toilets just in here. If you go through the artist's door and go straight ahead and then sort of, I was going to say follow your nose, but you don't want to say that for the toilet, do you? But you know, you'll find your way through there. So we can use those, you know, because there's fewer of us today, rather than go sort of out the back and let the cold air in every time that we go to and fro. So we'll close those doors, but they'll be open for you to go through to the bathroom.
It says artistes only, but it doesn't specify whether you are piss artistes or...
What else were we going to say? We were just talking about it. I can't remember.
Oh yeah, merch, on the merch. So we've got, we have a few of the pencil cases remaining. Suggested donation of £5 just to cover the costs if you want to take more for your friends. But the most important thing is the rewilding seeds. We want to see them grow in all your houses. So putting them in egg boxes and putting them, planting them out, and then as they grow, putting it on social media, and so then we can all celebrate when they all die. No, when they flourish.
We've got to get them to their total acreage, basically.
Yes.
So Pip and everybody else will just take whatever we give them.
So we see the rewilding Ambridge as a project that you're involved in, and yeah, that'll keep us laughing. Because despite, so quite a few people that have come found us through the festivals that we did last year. We did at Ilkley, we did Hay, obviously. Some of you were there. We had a busy year last year because we were promoting gossip, but because of the way it's fallen as a lifestyle, but because we haven't got a book to pump out this year, we're not at any festivals, so we're not going to really do academic cultures again until next year. So, you know, no worries, but there's no us to see in the next 12 months, so, you know, it's a good thing that you've had your fill today. However, next year, God forbid, when we've got the 2 books to promote, you'll be sick of the sight of us.
Absolutely sick of the sight of us. Did you have a question?
Do you have an estimation for next year?
Not yet, but it's the 70th, so you might guess where we're after.
We have some theories.
During the omnibus, the teas and coffees are going to stay here, and as ever, just please walk around, get up, get tea and coffee, just really informal. It will be playing loudly through the venue, but make yourselves at home, teas and coffees, biscuits, and tweet like crazy. And shall we now get on to the person who's won an award already?
Exactly. Controversial.
No pressure.
Prior to this speech, we have awarded Gary for his title, so you know, it could be all downhill from here. So this section is called Sunday Best, and we're going to hear Ambridge versus Springfield.
Thank you very much.
Good morning everyone, and hope everyone's refreshed after whatever they did last night, and good morning to everyone who's watching us at home. I know there's quite a few of my friends and enemies watching, so hello, and hope you're having as much fun as we are. My name is Gary Gilday and I run actorsfan.blogspot.com. It's a friendly little site that was set up after the BBC, in their infinite wisdom, decided to close down the comment section on the Actors website. It was initially set up by an amazing woman that lives in New Jersey. Hello, Ruth. And after a year, she handed it over to me for safekeeping, and it's been a pleasure so far. Now, The Archers and The Simpsons. 2 of the longest running documentary series ever. Between them, they have clocked up over 100 years of broadcast history, which is an astonishing achievement. But I think it's fair to put it to you that occasionally, just occasionally, they can both get a little bit creaky, a teensy bit repetitive, a smidge tired. And I thought, what can be done to remedy this? Well, we've all heard of programmes like Wife Swap and job swap and spoon swap. And one evening, after 2 mildly disappointing episodes of both of these venerated institutions, I got to thinking, population swap. Would that work to breathe new life into them? And if it didn't, would that be even better? On the face of it, both programmes have a lot in common. They're both named after a central core family. Both take place in a universe that's very rarely troubled by the real world, and both, by the very nature of life itself, I suppose, have begun to repeat themselves as the years go by. Let's shake them up a bit. Let's take them out of their comfort zone. Let's have the most hated person in Springfield, the evil billionaire Montgomery Burns, trade places with the most vile person in Ambridge, the foul, moody pig botherer Hannah Riley. What one? Yes. What one would be the quickest to turn an entirely new populace against them? Hannah, probably. Susan could go and run the quickie mart, and the ever-patient Apu could come and work in the village shop alongside Jim. Susan would find a whole new group of people to gossip about, while we would see how Apu would get on selling cheap, out-of-date meat to Emma. The bull, and I refuse point blank to call it anything else, the bull would be run by Mo Sislak, the world's most miserable and violent barman. Let's see how he would react the next time one of the younger crew in Ambridge tried to sell drugs in the pub, or a Grundy tried to wangle a free pint of Shires. I think Peggy, Willie and Grandpa Simpson would get on like a barn on fire. They're both manipulative monsters who continually manufacture wild schemes in their never-ending quest to remain relevant in the lives of their children. I can see a marriage. Just imagine Jenny Darling's reaction. Another character who would fit in rather nicely in Springfield would be Harrison. After all, he and Police Chief Wiggum appear to have almost identical arrest rates. Pretty much zero as far as we can gather. But where would the potential flashpoints and tensions be in this experiment? Well, I find it hard to imagine that the Reverend Lovejoy or Ned Flanders would be too happy if the Blessed Shula turned up in Springfield, muscled her way to the front of the altar to hand out spiritual advice to all and sundry. I think we all know how quick to violence these religious people can be on some occasions. And obviously Jazza and groundskeeper Willie must never be in the same geographical location. I'm from Glasgow, trust me on this one. And I think there would be huge, enormous differences when it comes to childcare. For example, whenever Marge and Homer have a night out, they actually pay cold, hard cash for a babysitter. Can you imagine the look on Pip's face if she was going out to cause some kind of incident on a farm and she wasn't able to just dump Rosie on whoever happened to be passing by? There would be hell to pay. And The Simpsons famously only has one child you never hear speak, baby Maggie. In The Archers, it sometimes feels as if there's been dozens of them throughout the years, if only that silence extended into later age. I'm talking to you, Freddie and Lily. Now, as both they're hateful. Now, as both communities are seemingly chock-a-block with bizarre loss-making hobby enterprises that miraculously keep almost everyone in paid employment, as always, money wouldn't really be a problem for the cost of this endeavour. Well, unless your trailer park white trash or a Grundy. It should, at this point, be noted that several people would not be permitted to take part in this life swap experiment due to various international treaties. For example, the export of Gavins is banned by Article 72 of the Geneva Convention, and both Lillian and Brian are classed, in my mind, as national treasures, and as such, the removal overseas is strictly prohibited. As intimated on my poster, I genuinely think this could and should be the starting point for a whole brave new world of human interaction, and I look forward to hearing from the relevant authorities in due course. It only remains for me to thank you all for listening to the ramblings of a man with quite obviously far too much time on his hands. I thank you.
Oh, that was fantastic. What a tonic. Absolutely brilliant. We are going to move straight on because we have that deadline that will not wait for us. And if we do have time before 10, we can do some questions then. But in what is perhaps one of our best titles in the hotly contested, it was a real close call. Over to you.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here. My name is Maggie Bartlett. I'm Professor of General Practice at Dundee Medical School in Scotland. I'm also a GP, and I've been a GP for 32 years. So I'm just going to say at this point, this presentation is not going to last any more than 10 minutes. Okay, so I'm very happy to be able to present this research project which I've conducted over the last few weeks to you this morning. So by way of introduction, I found a paper in the British Medical Journal, no less, that said that Ambridge has a population of around 700 people. I don't know what that's based on, but I'm going to go with it as truth because it was in the BMJ. And we know that the number of named and voiced characters is around 70. I've also tried to count up the number of named but unvoiced characters, and I think it's probably about 10. And there's some evidence from the Archer's website about that, but I'm not sure if you agree with me, but in recent years I think there are probably a few more that are named but unvoiced. But that leaves probably around 620 unnamed and unvoiced characters that must exist. They're the customers in the shop, the parents of the children in the primary school, the clientele of the bee at Ambridge. I'll go for it and be bold, even though I don't agree with it. So I'm very interested in the lived experience of those 600 plus people that they're in the background of our listening 6 days a week. So this was the aim of this study, was to really kind of explore the sense of being of that unnamed and unvoiced group. So the method of this project, I used purposive sampling. I didn't want a random sample of people. I wanted to make sure that I interviewed people who were representative of the population, a broad swathe of the population. People over 16 years old, aiming for 16 people that were interviewed, met in 2 focus groups, each lasting an hour with 8 people in each one. The approach I used was a phenomenological approach, which I was interested in their lived experience of being part of this group in Ambridge. It was an interpretive paradigm. That meant that I wasn't looking for universal truths. I was just interested in the subjective experience of this group. And the approach was, the theoretical lens was speculative ontology. Now, I thought I'd invented this for this research project. Turns out Kant got there before me, but that's probably true of everything. So I didn't go in trying to identify any particular themes from this data set. I wanted the themes to arise out of the data collected. And at this point, I just want to say something about ethics. So I tried very hard to work with the University Ethics Review Panel to get ethics for this project. However, the chair of that panel didn't really think there was any ethical responsibility for a population he perceived to be fictitious. But having pushed the point a little bit, I then found myself having a slightly uncomfortable conversation with one of my medical school colleagues, who just happens to be a psychiatrist. So, you probably won't see this at the back, so I'll just tell you what made up the occupations, the self-declared occupations of the people in the 2 focus groups. So the ones on the far side all self-identified as female. We had a granny providing childcare, a midwife, a bus driver, a refuse collection operative, a self-employed spinner and dyer, an airline pilot on maternity leave, a junior hospital doctor, and an apprentice narrowboat builder. So some of these are not typically female occupations, which just goes to show that Ambridge is a very well-developed village socially. In terms of those identifying as male, we had a retired jelly baby maker. And in my clinical practice, I have actually met somebody who had that job title. A primary school teacher, an electrical engineer, a llama farmer, a synchronised swimmer, a district nurse, an artificial inseminator, and a giblet processor from the chicken factory. So as you can see, a very diverse population, some involved in traditional rural industries and some absolutely not. So, the themes that came from the data, there were three main themes. The first one I titled as an existential codependence, and we'll have a look at some of the quotes. So the first person said, they need us. How could there be a shop with no customers? And we need them. Where would we be without them? I'm not sure we would be. But it's not like it's the Truman Show, is it? So there's some confusion here, but they're really not sure. And for those of you who don't know what the Truman Show is, that's one person who's real and everybody else in his life is an actor and he's living on a stage set, but he doesn't know that until the end of the film. More like the chicken and the egg, really. So again, some confusion. They really don't know whether they're there because of the voiced and named people or whether it's the other way around. And then a bit of comment, Bridge Farm, they need us. Think of all the things that wouldn't have happened if there wasn't the tea room. And the tea room needs customers too. A bit pricey in the farm shop though. And the next person says, oh, they're both too pricey for me. I go to Aldi on the bypass. Means I miss out on a lot, but at least I don't get caught in the crossfire. So you can see some tension here, that there's something going on about economics, there's something about kind of wanting to be in the thick of it, but actually being a bit scared of being caught in, and this very kind of battle-y language about crossfire there. Then the second theme was about resentment and an aspiration to have a voice, but fear of having one. So this person said, when anything happens to one of them, there's a big hoo-ha, lots of sympathy and casserole. When my Pearl died, it would have been nice to have had a mention. She was a friend of Jill Archer, but there was nothing. She could have brought me a casserole, and I could have said how hard it was, just one little sentence. And the response to that was, yeah, but if you did, nothing would be simple then. You'd have had to be depressed, or your Jerry would have gone off the rails, or you'd be burgled during the funeral, or fall in love with someone really awful. And then the last quote here was probably not worth it, really, the risk, just for one moment of being. I like a quiet life, safely off their radar. I'm just happy to roar in the bull once in a while. But I like the language there, this moment of being says quite a lot, that there's this sense that perhaps they don't feel that they are being, most of it, well, at all. So a little bit more on that same theme. When good things happen, they don't come up in the gossip. When our Lyra won that medal, they could have talked about that, things to be proud of in the village, and just a mention wouldn't do any harm. And somebody else agreeing, it would be nice, just now and then, to be a little bit known. Not enough for bad things to happen. Them not knowing about you when they know so much about all the others. And it's hard having to wait so long to get served in the shop or the ball, because that Jim Lloyd's having a rant, or Kenton and Jolene are having some kind of drama, when all you want is a quick loaf or a G&T. I feel like a second-class citizen. No, actually a third-class citizen sometimes. So there's this developing idea of a hierarchy of importance there. And then the final theme is about empathy for the named and unvoiced. So this person's saying, the thing is, the minute they know who you are, you're in for something. That's the price you pay. And it wasn't always clear who this they are, whether it was the dare I say it, the scriptwriters, or was it the listeners? We're not quite sure about who that they is. And this person says, yeah, well, you might get taken the mickey of, like poor old Mr. Pullen, or that woman Alistair Lloyd slept with a while back. And you don't get to say anything about it at all. And then there's some concern here, but what about the button girls? They're at risk, I'd say. So I think there's something building. The button girls seem to be in it a little bit more and being a bit more named these days. But then this group were thinking, well, perhaps the button girls' parents don't know that their daughters are at risk of becoming known and therefore at risk of adverse life events. And so somebody said, well, should we make sure they do? Should we do something something to protect the Buchan girls. And this provoked a really interesting reaction. No, we can't do that. That's not right at all. And this comes back to this uncertainty and this lack of clarity about being, that this person reacted so badly to the suggestion they could interfere with the natural unfolding of events in Ambridge. It was really very powerful. So, coming to the conclusions, the unnamed unvoice of Ambridge does exist in this state of tension about their sense of being. And this arises from their perceived existential codependence with the other two groups that they just can't work out. And they really are uncertain about the nature of their resistance, but they do have a wish to be known to exist and to be heard, with an awareness that that would result in a greater risk of adverse life events, which is scary. And this leaves them in this state of stress and tension, which is probably likely to have an adverse effect on their well-being. And we heard some stuff about well-being yesterday. So this leaves me with this rather sort of Sunday morning-ish question about the creator's moral responsibility for this group of people. And I'm going to leave that question out there. I don't know if there's going to be time for discussion or questions later. But maybe that's something that can be answered later on.
We do have time for some questions. We've got a good 15 minutes actually, which is great. So if there's questions for Maggie and also then for Gary as well, let's have them.
Question at the back.
Right, just a quick question. Was the Lyra that you mentioned who won a medal, the Olympic swimmer, the synchronized swimmer that was previously mentioned in the village's population of unspoken characters? Because I'd like to think so.
No, actually she wasn't. She's got something to do with his dark materials.
Yeah, can I just ask, who in fact were your unvoiced sample?
How do you mean?
Who did you actually interview?
Well, I interviewed them.
Fair enough.
Any other questions? One over here?
I was wondering if it was worth trying to get hold of some of the people who appear extremely occasionally. You were talking about mental health effects, but thinking of people like Dr. Locke, who the minute they appear, the listeners all say, what are they in for? What's the plot? What are they going to do? Are they going to do this? Here's a backstory for them, and get extremely excited and invent all sorts of imaginary stories around them, and then they fade away, and then it's like, why did they bring them in anyway? Why do we want to hear from them if they're not part of the ongoing plot? So it could be worth thinking about some of those characters and the effect on them of becoming temporarily visible.
Yes, absolutely. Well, in the follow-up study, I'll find some of them.
So I'm sure they'll be
Would you like to be a resident of Ambridge who isn't heard? How many in the room would?
But how much longer you'd have to wait in the shop while some drama was unfolding?
Well, you could just slow the drama up, couldn't you, by endlessly getting more themes. So the conversation between whoever and whoever wouldn't matter.
That's very true.
So I'm sure that many of the unvoiced characters have questions and comments, unfortunately.
Can I just question some of your figures? Because at the beginning you said there were 10 characters that were unspoken and... what was the other thing you said? Silence.
The
Yeah.
silent named ones.
Same but was that silent but named, yeah? But the guilds are 6 of those, so there must be more than 10.
Well, I think I was out of date, obviously, when I put this together.
10 would be Derek Fletcher. I think that's more than 10.
I think there is.
Yes.
Just thinking what you said about would you like to live in Ambridge, I was just thinking, who would you want to be a friend of if you lived in Ambridge? Who would you choose as a friend? I can't think of anyone I particularly want to buddy up with. No.
Kathy's friend.
That's a song, isn't it? Yep.
Not a question, but just to say I really love that.
It really made it worthwhile to come here on a Sunday morning. Is it possible to have the presentation emailed to us?
We could put it online. I'm sure if that's
Could we?
okay with that.
Yes.
Yeah, and there'll be a recording of it anyway online as well. Yeah, when I get all the papers through early, because I have to make all the slide decks in for it. And when yours came in and I read through it, I was in hysterics reading it. And I just thought, yeah, this is going to become a legendary paper.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right, so we're at 10:02. Oh my God.
So we have an option to sit in silence, or we could listen to the papers on PM. Should we do that? Should we put the radio on? Can we put the radio on, please? Oh yeah, broadcasting hands.
Something for you to start us off with.
Yes, so I'm looking at...
If anyone wants to learn the dark arts of the Archers tweet along, Claire Astbury will do a social media masterclass at the front. I mean, if you're not a... Hello, yes? For ease of accessibility for people who are using screen readers on Twitter, when you use a hashtag for the Archers, could you please capitalise the T and the A? It makes it a bit more difficult on the phone, but if you're kind of following the hashtag and someone else uses it, it'll be easier to pop up. Because a screen reader will read all lowercase as futures, and it makes it very difficult for people who are listening to the Twitter rather than reading it.
So just for the benefit of anybody who's still with us on the live stream, for rights reasons, we can't broadcast Radio 4 broadcasting us. Although I think this is, the kids are doing it all the time, aren't they? It's like a film of someone playing a game, of someone eating a cake. So, we'll be back at 11:15. Listen to the omnibus yourselves.
Hello, can I just say we've got plenty of Cat's calendars left over. Please come and help yourself. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Radio 4, please.